What's up guys, Landon with Late Model Restoration. Today I'm going to be checking out and installing the Ford Motorcraft cruise control buttons fitting the second generation Ford Lightnings. Beside me is my 2000 SVT Lightning that I've owned for 7 years. It's always been a garage kept truck and only has 64,000 miles. With upkeep like that and not seeing much sun exposure, you'd think the cruise control buttons would be in decent shape. Well, yes again. The cruise control buttons are a common issue on the second gen trucks. Over time, the factory plastic starts to crack and deteriorate, making them a pretty big eyesore in the interior. This cruise control button assembly is a factory Ford Motorcraft part, so it's going to be a direct fit into your 99 to 04 truck. Before installing this, I would recommend a 2-jaw puller to separate the steering wheel from the steering shaft. I would avoid using force to remove the wheel from the shaft if at all possible. To get things started, go ahead and disconnect the negative battery cable. Inside of the truck, locate the 2 bolt hole covers on each side of the rear steering wheel trim. Remove these with a small flathead screwdriver. Now remove the 2 8mm airbag retaining bolts. Carefully slide the airbag out from the steering wheel. Disconnect the airbag connection and set the airbag aside. Remove the steering wheel to steering shaft bolt with the T45 Torx driver. Before removing the wheel, disconnect the cruise control harness electrical connection. Now you're going to want to assemble your 2-jaw puller. I utilize an appropriate width socket in between the center screw and the steering shaft. Avoid using sharp objects because you don't want to damage the threads inside of the steering shaft. Turn the center screw clockwise to press the steering wheel off of the shaft. Once it's free, slide the airbag connection through the opening and then remove the wheel from the truck. Place the steering wheel on a clean workbench. With the wheel facing up, remove the horn connections with a small flathead screwdriver. Now remove the 4 Phillips head screws, securing the cruise buttons to the wheel. Flip the wheel over and remove the 2 Phillips head screws, securing the rear trim to the wheel. Set the trim aside. Flip the wheel back over and remove the cruise control harness from the wheel. Be sure to make note of the electrical wire routing on the factory harness so you can install the new harness in the same orientation. Slide the harness connection underneath the hard contact pad. Reroute the wire through the hooks and then position the buttons into place. Loosely thread the 4 button retaining screws. Make sure the top screw on the driver's side has the ground underneath the screw's head. Plug in the horn connections. Flip the steering wheel over, reinstall the trim piece, and then retighten the retaining screws. Flip the wheel back over and fully tighten the 4 cruise control button screws. Reinstall the steering wheel back onto the steering shaft in the same orientation. Make sure you pass the airbag connection through the opening in the steering wheel. Plug the airbag and cruise control harness electrical connections into the clock spring. Apply blue thread locking compound to the steering wheel, the steering shaft retaining bolt, thread it into the steering shaft, and then fully tighten. Double check to make sure the harness is not in a bind anywhere. Reinstall the airbag. Retighten the 2 8mm bolts and then snap the covers back into place. Reconnect the negative battery cable, check for operation, and you're all finished. As far as installation goes, guys, this one is very straightforward and should only take you around 30 to 45 minutes from start to finish. Again, I would recommend a 2-jaw puller to properly remove the steering wheel from the steering shaft. To see more informative Lightning restoration videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Of course, you can pick up this Ford Motorcraft cruise control harness from the only Lightning enthusiasts, LMR.com.